What's up, boss? Hi, everybody. I'm contractually obligated to mention to you, since this is a December episode, that here in the month of December, if you're considering year-end giving, to remember Abraham's wallet for your tax-deductible charitable giving. All right, so I can check that box and tell the Abe's Wallet accountants that I did my duty. Now we're going to pick up on an old subject that has lain dormant for a while. We're finally going to wrap up our quick series on discipling your children. Here we go. Here's me and Mark.
Mark, we started a series once upon a time on the discipling of one's children. We covered some ground, and then there has been some lag time. And in that interim, we toured your home. Did you happen to watch the episode where we toured your home?
Yeah, I got some less than thrilled feedback from my wife this morning about
You're
that
kidding.
episode. She was not a fan.
What happened?
She's like, you didn't talk about anything that we did here, like all these decisions that we made.
Oh, man.
The number of cousins was the determinant for the bunk room, and so I was like, I'm sorry, I guess I missed it.
What a bummer. Well, shoot, maybe sometime we'll go back through the house and have the wife tour us.
Yeah, she can probably give that tour. I mean, it wouldn't be the Abrahamic tour; it would be the Sarah.
Yeah, well,
tour.
Sarah's part of the puzzle.
The stock market went up by 7% yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, there are some headline grabbers.
Yeah, so we saw for the first time inflation come in lower than expected by a whole lot. So that was interesting.
Is there any way to tie that to an election happening? Does confidence go up? I don't know.
Inflation? No, that data was long since done before. It was data for October.
Oh, I mean the market shooting up by 7%.
No, it was exclusively because of the inflation number. That's it.
Oh.
They were saying, oh my gosh, we finally didn't have higher inflation than we thought we would.
I see.
And so maybe the Fed will stop raising interest rates and companies can grow again someday.
What do you think?
I think if we see continued downward, I mean, let's be honest, we're not talking about low inflation. I think it was at 6.4. So,
right.
If it stays there, we're still in a disaster scenario. But, it was quite a bit lower than they expected. If that continues, then Jerome Powell over at the Fed might ease off the gas pedal on the rate hikes, and that would cause stock market and other things to probably go up.
When's the next time that we should be looking for the Fed to give us rate hike news?
December 13th and 14th.
Oh, okay. Well, pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, they come fast here at the end of the year. We had November 1st and 2nd, and then we'll do December 13th and 14th and January 31st. So lots of opportunities for them to keep raising rates if they want to.
Are we rooting for one or the other? What do we want the Fed to do?
We want the Fed to travel back in time and get a hold of inflation back when the government decided to send checks out to everybody instead of 2 years late. But since this is not Michael J. Fox movie, then I guess we want them to take kind of a middle line and not. I think there's a little bit of a risk that they feel stupid because they told us that inflation was temporary and just being caused by COVID stuff. And so now they got to show that they're tough. And so I don't know. I'm not going to claim to be a smarter economist than the Fed's board of directors, but I think it's pretty hard to imagine a scenario where they don't have to throttle the economy to prevent inflation from continuing up. So,
okay,
they might have already done that, though. We'll find out in a year or two.
Have you heard this FTX news?
Oh goodness, yes.
Tell us about it.
So these guys, they got into the crypto with their bros from the dorm room, They said, let's start an exchange, guys.
They got their
And,
hands in the crypto cookie jar.
it started, it blew up. It was good. They were making a lot of money. They were living in the Bahamas. It was a bunch of like 28-year-olds living in the Bahamas, and just, you can't go wrong when everything's going up. Remember 2008 when you could buy a house in Las Vegas that was like $500,000 if you made $20 an hour?
Yes.
Because it's all going to go up. And if you get into a bad situation, you just sell it and make money, no problem. And the notable thing about the FTX collapse was not that it happened. I mean, you and I are quite familiar with crypto exchanges collapsing. It's more that it happened overnight, basically. Real quick, though.
Yeah.
I'm being delivered a coffee during the Abraham's Wallet podcast. That's
Hi,
service.
Amelia. I'd like to apologize on behalf of the podcast for the way that your home tour was handled.
Well,
I heard
no,
it was a
I
real disappointment.
I told Mark, I was like, there's so much more flavor we could have added about like why we picked the size table, where we got it, all that stuff. So next time
We're going to
invite
do
me.
it again, and you'll be leading the way.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. That sounds good.
Thanks for the coffee.
Special guest cameo right there.
Yeah, nice.
And
well, ratings
you know
go
why?
up when she appears.
She brought me a coffee because we were hustling to get started here, and I'll tell you, the only reason I really wanted a coffee, it's a decaf coffee, so we don't have any like stimulant effects here.
Oh,
It's because I got a Kit Kat, and I don't think there's much better treat than a Kit Kat bar dipped into a coffee.
okay.
That's just
All right.
That's a free tip. You
Okay.
might consider a financial tip. I don't know, but
All right.
it's free. I don't charge for that.
Well, I have to throw in a couple of things also that have happened since we were last together. Alabama lost again. That's significant in my household.
How does that
It
make
was
you feel? Because when they hadn't, I was kind of thinking, well, Texas A&M, they may have not had the best season, but they gave Alabama a real game. But if we find out that Alabama's not that good, does that make you feel worse, or are you still happy?
No, it still makes me happy. It's sort of like Texas losing and Alabama losing. That always brings a Yuletide cheer into the room, brings a smile on my face.
Okay.
The Astros, with whom I have a contentious relationship, also won the big
Did you see this mattress guy
Championship.
who placed a bet on him?
I'm very familiar with Mattress Mac. Yes.
Yeah, that was. I mean, he's clearly a degenerate gambler, but it was still pretty fun to see him do it.
Very fun.
Do you want to tell people real quick what happened?
Sure. There is a character. He has a furniture store on I-45 North between Tidwell and Parker, as I'm quoting the ads I heard since childhood. And he's like one of the pillars of the city of Houston. And so he is, something like he buys front row seats to Rockets games and is always front and center with the Astros. And so at some point, I think towards the end of the regular season, he put down a stack of cash for the Astros to win the World Series. How big was that stack of cash? It was
I believe he made a $5 million bet.
Yeah, I thought it was $7 million.
The payout, you'll tell us.
Mattress Mac is doing okay. So if he had to write that off as some sort of promotional stunt, I'm sure he knows what he's doing. But guess what? They did win, and he cashed in a ticket to the tune of $72 million.
And what I thought was interesting is that if they had a promotion for mattresses, that if you bought one of the most expensive mattresses they sell, I don't know how much that would cost, probably $10,000 or $15,000, and the Astros win the World Series, you get all your money back.
He does all of that stuff, and they pay out on it. He does it year after year. It's great. It's fun. Now then, shall we proceed?
let's be done with this foolish banter and get into the meat of the
Good.
episode.
So we've been teasing people for weeks about the theories behind child discipleship, and we've established a couple of things. One
I
is that
don't think we teased anybody. Like we identified that some of our listeners are terrible at child discipleship, but we didn't tease them about it. We just said get better.
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But what we have made a promise to do is give them some practical help, because we've dealt philosophically on the idea that to make a disciple is to teach someone how to obey. We talked about the kind of obedience that we're looking for, that we're supposed to be training against. And now, there's a lot to say on this subject. We could easily go 10 episodes deep on this, no problem. But I wanted to take some time to give people some practical help. And you said that you wanted to do something about money, discipling our kids in the realm of finance. So I think I'll go first, because I think mine is probably the earliest with your children.
I feel
Shall-
like we're both gonna throw some stuff out there. I'll give a little money stuff. I don't think anything I have is new. Like I
Okay.
think we've mentioned it here and there on the podcast, but I mean, let's go. Let's talk. Let's talk about sleep. Let's talk about when are you supposed to train them and how and all that jazz. I'm
Okay.
excited.
One thing that's really common for people to do is let their children run free and then react when they act poorly. That's a terrible strategy, and it's not good for anything that you're supposed to train. That's not how you would run a basketball team. All right, let me just see how everybody plays for a while, and then yell at you when you do wrong. No, I'm going to start by telling you how I want things to work. You would do this with animals. You would train them, not wait to react to them. And so training is something that's proactive. It's something that you do you do it neutral. You don't wait until you're happy or sad. You just say, okay, I've got this child and I need to start training them. So if that's the case, then a regular question is, when's the right age to start training? We have seen it happen that you could start training your child to obey. And I'm going to put a bunch of things into this basket. You could start training your child to obey while still in the womb. Have you ever heard of this, Mark?
My eyebrows are all the way up. I'm skeptical, and let me hear you defend this.
Okay. Well, I am going to I'm going to posit something that is debatable. You don't have to agree, but what we have seen is that putting a child, get ready for it, on a schedule sets them up for a lifetime of obedience. We think it's good office work for obedience training, because the child learns as soon as possible that I have to submit my desires to something above me that's telling me it'll go this way. So if you've heard of, a sleep schedule, et cetera, Baby Wise is a very popular book that talks about this sort of thing. My wife believes in it. Our friends believe in it. But we had a friend who was so in on child training and sleep training that she knew when her baby was asleep in her womb, and she would wake the child up if she didn't want the child asleep at that time. So I'm not kidding. Real life here. The child came out of the womb on a sleep schedule and was hitting the sleep schedule the day the child was born. So you don't have to do that, but I'm telling you, I do believe that starting with
This is where I need to go downstairs and grab the obstetrician and just ask if this is even really possible.
Okay, you can do that.
That's
I know
a
it's
story.
possible. And we never did this, by the way, but I'm just telling you it's possible.
Okay.
You have said this to people before, and it's the way that we tend to think, which is, hey, bro, for a month of your life, especially if it's your first kid, just like all bets are off, and you might be awake all night long for a week. Who knows? And we tend to that's our
The
move.
fog of war. That's what I tend to call it. I
Yes, and
say
then
prepare yourself for the absolute fog of war and just keep marching because it only lasts at most about 10 to 12 weeks.
Yes, and then you sort of start arranging your life. You put things into
Right.
shape. We just find that mothers, particularly, can be full of anxiety and move toward depression if there isn't some order. So we find, as I said, that putting a child on a schedule as soon as possible is good for the child, because the child becomes ingrained in the child that what the pattern through my day isn't something that I picked. It was something that was put upon me, and I had to adjust to this pattern. So, I don't even remember what it is exactly. It's like you feed the child when it wakes up, or you feed the child right before they sleep. Is that right?
Eat, wake, sleep.
Thank you.
You don't
Thank you.
feed them to bed.
That's it. That's right. That's right. Eat, wake, sleep. Thank you.
It's a
So,
good principle for yourself too, to be honest. Is to not shove, an ice cream cone and a couple ounces of bourbon into your mouth right before you go to bed.
here. Yes. So when that becomes the pattern of a child, when you then tell the child, okay, the next thing that you'll have to submit to is my voice telling you what you can and can't do, what you can and can't pull, grabbing grandma's glasses, or grabbing my cheek, et cetera, biting mother's breasts, no good. So when you have set up a pattern of you're going to submit to something outside of yourself, it makes things easier. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to the best thing
Can
that
I just throw a little bit in there?
yeah.
I am fond of telling people with babies, there's like a whole cottage industry of baby advice. And for sure, you
Sure.
can find a book that will tell you that the only way to do it is exactly the way they recommend. And if you do anything else, you're going to completely jack your kids up. I think that the principles that we have outlined in the last few weeks are unmovable, that you must become the North Star for small babies, even all the way down to very young, that you view yourself that way and that you're comfortable with the idea that they will come to view you as the one they must obey.
Yeah.
On some of the specific tactics, you and I are both huge fans of the Baby Wise method. And yet, I would say that every baby book on especially that first 6 months should at the end say, if you've tried all of this and it doesn't work, try doing the exact opposite and see if that works. So
Right.
I just think there's a lot of grace. You
For
said
sure.
moms get into like depression is a real thing. There's depression that could come because kind of I think I felt this when I had our first kid because I was like, this is awful. What have I done? There's also medical stuff that can happen that could be addressed and
Sure.
spiritual things. So don't don't hear what we're saying and say, well, I'm feeling depressed after I had a baby, and maybe it's because I'm not doing discipline right. We're not saying that at all. We're saying this is one piece, and there's a physical health piece, there's a spiritual health piece. All of that's important, and I just felt like I should
Yeah,
disclaim
no,
all of
that's excellent point always. I go back to what we said with the critical steps to Abrahamic greatness, which is I'm talking to somebody who you're pregnant and you're thinking, what might we do from here? And this is my personal prescription. If your goal is, I want a child to learn obedience, what's the best path for me to take? I think if you teach them if you teach them a sleeping and eating schedule, it sets you up to go into obedience. That's the only point I'm making. It doesn't work for everybody. If you don't like that, there's not a Bible verse that says get your child on a sleep schedule. So that's not this isn't something we're going to break fellowship over. It's just what I've seen.
And it worked for us.
It worked great for us.
All right. Onward.
Okay. Onward. So if our goal, again, is to teach our children how to obey, then the question is, what can they handle at what age? What can they comprehend? And I would like to make the point that at whatever age they can comprehend obedience, that's when you should begin. You shouldn't let any child last any amount of time wallowing in selfish dominion and rebellion. You should cut that out as soon as possible. You set precedents in a child's heart, and we could go into the results of that, but we won't, because we're going to talk best case scenarios.
Let's definitely get specific, though.
Yeah, I'll get specific.
Here it comes.
So what I think is at 5 to 6 months, when a child can sit up, can grasp, can manage himself a bit, that's when we started with child training. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean when I say child training. 5 to 6 months. I'm going to recommend a book that would make my wife blush, because this book is contentious. We've mentioned it here, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. It's contentious because the authors are so plain spoken. They are Mennonite, and they're so plain spoken about spanking. They'll just show a couple verses about spanking, just go that, yeah, that's what you got to do. The end, move on, next subject. They talk in ways that would embarrass a suburbanite about, they compare training a horse right at the beginning of the book with training a child. And why don't you just train your children to be like you would enjoy them the same way that you would train a horse? You don't start with a horse and just go, wonder what he's going to do. No, you just start training him. The book is called, wouldn't I like to know?
To Train Up a Child.
The book is called To Train Up a Child by Michael and Debbie Pearl. And for me, it's all I can say is I looked far and wide, and this was the best resource I could find on training a child the way the scripture describes. And you might take umbrage at some of Michael's sayings or his attitude, but I think it's excellent. I still give it to new parents. So this is what I'm going to tell you. I think I lifted directly from that book. Do you want to say something about the pearls?
I would just say that we definitely read that book. We got a lot of meat off the bones, and we did spit out some bones. And so there are things in that book that we said, nope, not for us. And the biggest argument for me, I mean, the Bible doesn't say, it doesn't go into that many. When you think about the hugeness of the role of elder, for example, this is the person who's going to lead the church. It really says the number one qualification is to look at their family and see how it's going. And so when I look at the pearls, they've got a bunch of adult children and grandchildren now who are all following Jesus.
Correct.
And so you would think if these are just mean kind of fundamentalists out in the woods that are doing weird stuff, their kids would grow up and say, see you later, mom and dad. But that hasn't happened at all. So I kind of give them more weight than I would have if I had just picked it up and had no context for their families, because they have done something that is what my wife and I are trying to do, which is to raise grandchildren and great-grandchildren who follow Jesus.
Great point. And their children have also kind of continued their publishing ministry and serve them in that. Me and my friend Adam dragged our families behind us and went to see the pearls in lovely, scenic Troy, Ohio once. And we were surrounded by the Amish and Mennonite, and it was a grand time. We just loved it. We loved everything that they said. We loved seeing a string of 7 boys sitting quietly for an hour while a lecture went on. It was a great day.
Do you think that our children will carry on our publishing and broadcasting dynasty when we're gone? Will this be like Kyla and Joy bantering and then diving into the week's funny topic?
I think there might be some arm wrestling going on between the event planning dynasty and the media dynasty. I think my younger is probably more suited to sticking herself on camera and talking endlessly.
Okay.
We'll see. Okay. So at this 5 to 6 months time, here's what I want to recommend. It's such a simple thing. And I'm not kidding when I say if you do this 5 minutes a day, you will train your child to obedience. I just called it training time. And I remember my wife looking over my shoulder worriedly, biting her nails while I did this, because I just thought, we're just going to train these kids how to obey. So what you do is you put your kid in a high chair, you put in front of them something uninteresting. Here, how about this? Say this little thumb drive, which is on my desk. That's fine. It's uninteresting. It's a little black block. Put that in front of the kid. Then put something that is a little sparkly, like a glass curio that's on a shelf somewhere. It's a little bit delightful. Here, I'll grab this off of this shelf. It's this shiny silver lid. I put these two things in front of the kid. And with the black thing that's less interesting, I say, this is a yes. And I act excited about it. And this shiny thing, I say, this is a no. And I act a little bit dour about that. I put them both in front of the child. And when the child reaches for the uninteresting thing, which is a yes, I cheer. Yes, good boy. That's a good boy. When the child reaches for the shiny no object, I simply say, plain faced, don't be angry about it. We're training now. We're not angry. When we're training layups, we don't get angry at the kids that do them poorly. We just instruct them and correct them. So when the child reaches for the shiny silver, we give them a little, if you could watch on video, a tap on the hand and say, no. And you will think this child is going to react in such a way that you would think that you're pulling his hair out by its roots, because of the reaction is going to be so offended and so upset. And mother will come running. What have you done to the child? I'm just training. It's okay. These tears are not poisonous. The child will be fine. And you put them back in front of him and you say, this is no. This is yes. And this is no. And then just repeat it and do it over and over. And what you'll find is that once the child gets corrected for the no, that's what they'll go back to again and again, because your child is a sinner. So they will go back to the no over and over, and you have to keep a stiff upper lip, no emotion. I'm not mad at you, but these are the consequences of you doing that. And I'm just saying no. I'm not hurting the child. I'm giving them a reinforcement physically.
It's all emotional. The tears are 100% emotional at that point.
Of course.
If you've drawn tears because you whacked them, you did it wrong.
You did it wrong. And your face shouldn't say, I hate you and you disappoint me. It should just say nothing. That's a no. This is the consequence of touching that. Here's the consequence of touching this. That's a good boy. And you just sit there and wait. Do that for 5 minutes a day. And then when you're done, you take them away, pick them up out of the high chair, go on a walk. Great. Forget about it. Just do that for 5 minutes a day. And what you'll find is that the places where you say no, there will be an instinctual reaction developed over time that I don't want to do no's. When daddy says no, I don't want to do those, because you're training a child in the way he should go. Teach them how to obey. So as the child grows up, they're walking around, 18 months old. We did something called the training game, which to this day, my daughters have the most wonderful memories of the training game. They didn't think of it as a punishment whatsoever. They thought of it as time with daddy. And at night, I would take my children of various ages in front of me and say, we're going to play the training game. And I would always have in my hand some M&Ms or some little treat. And they would see that. I would say, this is the reward for the training game. And all I did was give them directions, repeatedly give them directions. Okay, everybody stand up. Great. Let's have everyone turn in a circle. Great. Let's have everyone walk over to the couch, touch the couch, and come back. Ho, good job, you guys. Okay, now let's have everyone run and scream, touch the front door, and then run and scream back. But when you get back, silent. Go. And you just continue this, them simply doing what you say. And I always made it a part of the training game that, okay, now we're going to sit still and quiet. We're going to do it for 30 seconds. Ready, go. And I just sit there and I'm affirming them all along the way. This is going great. You're doing good. Don't say anything. You're doing great. Get to 30 seconds. Yes, great job. Well, that was a great job with the training game. Everybody gets 2 M&Ms. Wow, 2 M&Ms. And do that again the next night. And over time, extend the amount of time that they have to sit there quietly. So that as they're growing up, we're going for 3 minutes. Quiet. Don't move a muscle. Stay in your area. Don't touch your sibling. And all we're teaching is obedience. We're training them to do what I say. You can get creative. You can be more complicated. Okay, I want you to go upstairs to your room. I want you to take the pillow off your bed, and I want you to put it in the hallway. And you won't even see it. You're sending them away from your sight, and you're sending them to go do a job that you can't see. And then they come back excitedly, we did it and you couldn't see it. Are you sure you did that? Okay, I'm going to go upstairs and check. That's pretty good. I'm excited. What are you doing? We're training our children how to do chores. We're training them to do things when I'm not looking, and we can give them coaching. Now, I told you to put it on the 3rd step, but you kind of sloppily put it from the 2nd to the 5th step. I wanted it on that 3rd step, whatever, etc. So those 2, I just gave you the 2 magic things that are the best things I know for training a child to obey, which is that the dumpy looking thing and the interesting looking thing, and make sure the interesting thing is the no. Put them in front of the child. You're going to have a few nights of tears, and then you'll be impressing the neighbors. I'm just telling you, that's how that works. And then as they get older and they get mobile, you do the training game. Make it simple, make it something that they can win at, and you're going to be cheerleading them. There's not even any correction involved in the training game. It's all cheerleading. Give them an instruction, they pull it off, you cheer for them. They're delighted, and they go, wow, obeying daddy is wonderful. We love it. What else do you want us to do, Dad? Isn't that great?
Yeah, we have used the training game a lot. I think maybe we'll talk about this, but when you have a spread of kids, it's easy to tailor to the oldest, I think, and skip stuff. So we've had, with a whole bunch of different child training stuff, we've also had to go back and go, oh man, we stopped doing this for the younger 2 when the oldest was not right. It was no longer appropriate. And we kind of missed something there. But yeah, big fan of the training game. And, it's a little bit, makes me feel like Father Von Trapp, where I blow the whistle and they all snap to and salute and say their names for the new au pair. But, so if you want that feeling of being the in control patriarch, the training game gives you a little pretend version of that.
It certainly does. And I would say there's an age at which that's completely appropriate. If you're making soldiers that can lead in war, they start out by knowing how to line up and how to march, and they do it exactly the way they're told. And this is true of any endeavor. I mean, I always learned that, what Picasso did first was he studied the old masters, and he had old painting techniques, and he didn't get into, you might know this about Picasso, he didn't get into any innovation until he was in his 70s. That's when he started doing the stuff that we think of Picasso doing now. He spent most of his life following the old masters and learning the basics, if you will. And that's how it is with us and the Lord, which is we obey, we do as we're told, and eventually over time, he gives us the kingdom. And he says, now I want you to build and I want you to be in charge. And the scripture says, if you aren't able to be in charge of someone else's stuff, who will give you stuff of your own?
Right.
And so there is something about having your young ones especially fall right in line, and they demonstrate they can be trusted.
Amen.
So, okay, that's my 2 cents on how to develop obedience, particularly in young ones. And there was a mantra around my house, which is, when do we obey? And the answer was the first time. That was said over and over and over in my house. When do we obey? The first time. Now, they are thinking, obeying what me and mother tell them. That's what they're thinking. What I'm thinking is, this is how I want them to be with the Lord when they grow up. When do we obey? The first time. So I'm trying to, just as sleep training sets them up for a life of obedience because they're submitting to a system that's beyond them, so is it that obeying to a parent who you can see sets you up to follow a God that you can't see, and you follow his word. Because we spend most of our lives, do we not? If I go back to the training game, upstairs, out of sight, if you will. We can't see Father, but he's told us what to do. And we're upstairs and we know what he's told us to do, and we execute, and we're going to come back to him. And we're going to hear either rejoicing or correction from him. And we want to hear cheers. So now I'm tying back to what we said in the second episode, but if our job is to teach how to obey, I'll even say that that's true if you are a disciple maker. Let's say you're 30 years old and you found a couple of 18-year-olds that you want to mentor. You should at the outset give them some jobs to do where they just have to do what you say. And they might chafe at that. But you say, this week, fellas, I want you all to read these chapters. And when we get back together, I want you to present me some notes about what you found. I'd like to have 2 support passages elsewhere in the Bible. Just tell them what to do. We're so lax to do that, but it's good parenting to give very specific instructions. I want to train you how to obey, to do just what I said. And you might think, well, who am I to pick that up? Well, you're a parent. That's who you are. And so you have to train these things. All right. I'm tired of talking. What do you want to say?
Well, I think I was going to give a few tips on, ostensibly we're a financial podcast. And so the scriptures talk about money in a lot of ways, but one of the most common ways they talk about it is as a proving ground where you can demonstrate faithfulness in something that really doesn't matter that much. Like we've talked about the 5 capitals that, if I told you to go out and get more relationship with God, that'd be challenging. It's hard. But if I told you to go make $20, you'd figure out a way out to do it, even if you had to stand on the corner with a sign. Like there are ways to get your hands on money. So the reason it's a great training ground is because it's pretty low consequence when we make, especially early on and small mistakes. Like you can go, oh, I lost some money there. I always think about the story of my pipe. Do you remember that story?
No.
In college, all the guys smoked pipes around the fireplace, and we thought that would be just a cool thing to do. So I went to the pipe store, and they had like a broke college student deal where for $20 you could get a pipe and a little bit of pipe tobacco, and you're off to the races. Well, I walked in planning to do that, and I walked out with like a $200 pipe. That was the coolest thing ever. And I got to the end of the block, and I thought, I cannot afford this pipe. What have I done? And I went back and I said, I need to return this. You talked me into something I can't afford. The guy said, no problem. I will happily give you store credit for this thing. And I'm
Ah.
thinking, store credit? I can't. I think I used like $5 worth of pipe tobacco in 4 years of college. Like, it
Right.
wasn't really a normal thing for me.
Oh,
But
that's a great story.
I learned something there. And as much as $200 felt extremely consequential at the time, it didn't ruin me financially for life.
Right.
Um, and so I think about money with kids similarly, as I want them to make mistakes while they're under my roof.
Agreed.
And I actually, I don't know, I haven't thought this through, so you can challenge it a little bit, but I'm secretly kind of the happiest when they make mistakes versus when they do it right, because I want that to happen now. And so some examples: when they're just old enough to be, able to kind of identify things and recognize cost. They don't even have to be able to read cost at the grocery store. But if I can say, here's $3, you must spend it and go. Everyone has to spend $3. And if we're at, I don't care where it is, the dollar store is a great place to play this game. But you can do it at the grocery store, you can do it at Target, doesn't matter. And inevitably, some people will make good choices and some people will make bad choices. We've talked on this podcast about experiences tend to be more rewarding in the long run than stuff.
Yes.
Well, kids can start to figure that out when they realize that a Heath bar gives me just a wonderful experience. But the little plastic figurine that I thought, well, I'll buy that and then I'll have it, and it breaks because it was $1. That is kind of disappointing. And so I am excited to say to kids, here's a small set amount of money. You have to spend it. Go and just see what happens. And, it can be a really good training game for money. And really what you're looking for there is, I want to train them to make bad choices. And then next time, before I send them out, I might say, now, last time we did this, you cried. And when we got home, why? And so I'll help them towards the learning. But that's a great kind of starter money game for kids.
So about what age would you do that?
Oh man, I mean, I bet that my youngest was 2 when we were doing that. Now I would have to go with her because she would stick whatever looked appealing in her. But 3, 4, you're definitely able to do it as long as you've got the manpower to accompany them around the store. And I love sending my kids to do shopping at all now, and it started there. But my kids, I said to an 8-year-old the other day while I was cooking, I was like, I can't really leave. Can you go to the grocery store? It's about a quarter mile from my house.
Right.
So you ride your bike to the grocery store, and I want you to find these things, and I don't know what brand I want. Find the one that's the cheapest.
That's great.
And she was good enough, because she had played this game growing up. She knew how to just say, I know where to find the price and I'll compare it. Now, she could get fooled. I mean, unit costs and stuff could probably fool her, but she came back. I was very pleased with what she did.
That's
the cashier just at our grocery store know that my kids are regularly there by themselves. They got flack for the first few visits. Like, where are your parents? And they said, we're here doing grocery shopping. Do you need
I love
anything?
it.
So
the other thing that I've seen that's like that is, if you have we have a family fun night, and it's a night where we're going to usually go out to a cheap meal together, and we usually have one fun thing we do, whether it's going to the park or playing a board game in an interesting location or something. So it's a fun family thing and a dinner. And one great use of that night is to give everybody $8 or $10. So it's limiting. And then go into a grocery store or one of these like delis where there's pre-made food, and just go, okay, you can get anything you want. There's your $8. And they can't get anything. They've got to put some pieces together. And somebody's going to end up hungry at the end, and somebody's going to end up with a lot of food left over because of the choices they made. It's a great training thing, and it's fun.
Yeah. And as someone who speaks to people all the time about their budgets, I'll tell you that budgeting groceries is still very hard. A lot of people don't know how to do it as 40-year-olds.
Full-grown adults.
So anytime it may seem like, well, we're teaching them with something as silly as how to buy food. That's actually a really big skill. If you can budget how to buy food, you are set up better than a lot of folks. So
great.
We've talked about a couple of these things, so I'll just mention them real quick. I want them to learn that investing can produce returns that they will see for the long haul. So we do the Bank of Dad, where they each have a savings account and they know that they will earn 10% annual interest on that savings account, which is obviously a silly interest rate for a savings account, although we are getting kind of close to these days. But they don't think too much about it, except the once a year when I go, hey, it's I pay annually, and I say, this was interest day. Let's all gather around and hear how much you made. And my oldest daughter has a couple $1,000s in her savings account, and I said, I just put $200 more in your account because you've left that there and not touched it. So I like that exercise as a early way to teach that money has value over time. And I say, even if you don't save $1 more, next year when we get to this, you have $2,200. So you're going to get $220, not $200, because you will be getting paid not only on what you've put in, but on the growth. So use that as an opportunity to teach about compound interest.
Good one. What do you brought up your oldest. I think you'd said that this summer she was maybe going to breed a dog and deal with puppies. Did she do that?
She didn't, because she's a researcher and she has dug deep into the books and decided that it's better to wait one more heat. So we currently right now have a dog in heat. And next go round, so 6 months from now will be time to get that dog knocked up.
Okay.
Although the floor has fallen out of the doodle market a bit since the peak of COVID. So my requirement is you better have deposits and commitments for at least like 8 puppies before you even think about breeding this dog. Because otherwise I'm going to take them out back and drown them. We're not having 10 puppies for 6 months.
Okay. We'll edit out the part about drowning puppies.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, whatever. Let's see. I have a question for you before I get to kind of my last one, but in real time, I would love to get your answer, because I ran up into a situation with kids and money that I didn't really know if I handled it very well. But there was income for all of the kids. They all got paid kind of by grandma, so it was a generous payday, but everybody got $70.
For what?
And what?
For what?
They had been helping with some stuff in her yard. And
jeez.
I said, really, she wanted to give a gift. And I said, great. But, as we do, we talked about what do you do when you get money? And we talked a little bit about first fruits. And I thought we were all on the same page. And I had 2 of the 3 say, here's what I would like to do some giving towards. Great. That sounds just like something you would do. That's awesome. The other one said, I think I'm going to not give anything. I don't really think I would like to give anything. I'd like to spend it all, actually. And I don't want to create a culture that says you just do it because dad says. I really want to build the value of generosity. But I was a little taken aback because I thought, well, do I take it from her? Do I take all the money away and say, you're not a trustworthy receptacle? I don't know if I handled it well. So what do you do?
What did you do?
I did something I'm very reluctant to do, which normally I would recommend against, which is I sat down and had a long conversation with an 8-year-old. And it was fine. At the end, I still wasn't sure if she was doing what she was supposed to do to get dad off her back, or if she had actually seen the value,
Yeah.
But that's what I did, and we got to something that sounded right. But I'm not sure that I have her heart right now on generosity. So, any thoughts?
Yes. Two things. One is we have hyped this before. I shall hype it again because it's part of child training. We went through Financial Peace Junior. I think it's a 6-week course that you can do as a family when your kid's around 6 years old. And it talks about 3 components of money: spend, save, and give. And you break all income into those buckets. And it also creates ways for the kids to get income, like dusting or whatever. So they get income, and you create a habit that every time money comes into their hands, it's spend, save, and give. Because of the simplicity for a child, I would give different advice to a 20-year-old. Because of the simplicity conceptually for a child, if our child gets $3, we put $1 toward each: spend, save, give. We just want to get them in the habit of, when money comes into my hand, it's not just mine to spend. It goes to 3 places. So I would say with your children, $70 comes into their hand. I would immediately, again, emotionlessly, it's just like a tap on the hand, emotionlessly. All right, what are we going to do with regards to spend, save, and give? We're at the point with our children where we would ask them that question. I would just sit and listen to their answer. These switches can be toggled. I've got a 13-year-old now. So the 13-year-old will say things like, well, I'm not really saving up for anything particular right now, so I'd like to put more towards saving than spending. I'll just put a little towards spending. And she's getting to the age where somewhere between 10 and 25% going towards giving. I'm not going to debate it. That sounds great. And show approval and encouragement. But each of those things is going to happen every single time.
Yes. So that is what we are 100% in lockstep on this.
Right.
The question is, when they say, I've decided I don't think I'd like to do one of these buckets this time.
Well, that'll never be an option. You will do that because that's what we do. That's what our family does with money. So that's not a choice.
Okay. That's where I went, is this isn't how the Parretts handle money. And let me tell you why. We have a king, and he's looking to see how we handle stuff.
That's great.
But yeah, I wasn't. What I wanted was, an emotional repentance. And what I got was,
okay,
I guess I'm going to give to the Pregnancy Resource Center.
No problem. I say that's a win. That's totally fine. Mark, let me throw out a verse here. I don't know where it is off the top of my head, but I know the verse exists. Commit your ways or your acts unto the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. So you just want your children to start walking in the ways of God. And then over time, they will become enculturated to that, and they will start to understand / believe in what they're doing, which we know is right. The other thing I was going to say about your situation is, because you want to win your child's heart on the subject of giving, just make a note to yourself that I'm going to make sure that she experiences giving. She experiences the benefits of what her dollars can do. So if she's giving to, you mentioned a crisis pregnancy center, then figure out a way for your family to be involved somehow, and her to get a tactile experience of, this is what I allowed to happen. This crisis pregnancy center just gave this impoverished lady a year's worth of diapers. That's what you paid for to take care of that child. That is so huge to her. Something like that, so that she can experience the benefits of giving, because she's trading off, in her mind, she's trading off something very experiential and tactile, which is what she could have spent the money on something that is completely ethereal. So you got to do what you can to balance that out.
That's good. Okay, last one, and I'm going to caveat this because this is a thing that we are about to do, but we haven't done it yet. I want to
Okay.
be very careful anytime I'm treading into waters where somebody could say, you don't do that. Well,
Uh-huh.
that's right. But I like the idea and I can report back on it, which
Excellent.
is our kids are not going to be using cash almost ever. They will not be using cash as adults. You don't use cash for most things you buy.
True.
And going back to my principle of I want them to have reps under my roof where they're allowed to mess up. I want them to know what it means to spend money on a card and, be able to know, did I have the money to afford that? It wasn't like in the examples we talked about so far, they go with $8, they get to the register, it's $14, and the person goes, yeah, you can't have all this.
Yep.
There will be a time for our kids where most likely they will be able to buy the $14 when they really only have $8. So,
and they'll happily run that card.
I want them to get some reps at this. And there's a tool that is getting a lot of rave reviews called Greenlight. Have you heard of Greenlight?
Yeah, we talked about it on this very podcast.
Okay. I forgot that we had talked, but
Yeah.
it's a debit card for kids, and you can go as simple as it's just a debit card for your kids where you can put a certain amount of money into each of their accounts and they can use their card. And then they have all manner of more complex options if you want to pay more per month to use their service. You can get an investing platform where kids can start to buy stocks. You can get more of kind of a management platform. So the point is that I'm very interested in getting my oldest to the point where, a lot of times after school, if I'm not able to pick people up and there's people at different times, my oldest will walk over to the coffee shop and spend an hour doing homework there, and then I'll pick her up later. Right now, I just give her my credit card. I would like to get to a point where I say, I'm going to probably need to do this once a week. So you are going to get one coffee's worth of money on your card, and you can buy the chocolate croissant and the thing, but you're now dipping into your money.
Right.
That's not money I've provided. So I'm excited about that. And I think we should be looking for ways to prepare our kids for what's coming and not just what we wish was the case, which was you remember the day when we each got a $5 bill for allowance, and
right.
It was very simple. Well, that's just not the world they're going to grow up in, so that's not great training.
Yep. On this note, I'll say for my oldest 13th, she got a debit card, so she's doing that very thing. And the other thing that's kind of along these lines is that we got her one of these watches where she can call mom and dad on the watch.
The Gab watch?
I don't remember what it is.
All right. We just got the Gab watch for great grandma this week because she keeps falling over and it takes her like 7 hours to get to the cell phone.
Well, I'll put it in the notes if that's what it is. I'll put it in the show notes. And she can also text the two of us only. I mean, she could text everybody if I put it in her address book,
sure.
But I don't and won't.
You didn't put everybody in the address book.
What's that?
You didn't put everybody in the address book.
I put 2 people in there. So it is a low level of responsibility, of freedom, with very strongly defined constraints on it. So that is a parallel to me of the debit card, like you're saying. And yeah, we have to develop their capacity as they grow older. So I think that's really wise.
Yeah. Well, can I bring us home, Stephen?
Please.
I think that the overarching tale that we're trying to tell in this episode, and really in all of the child training talk that we've done, is that you need to be proactively thinking about how can I prepare my kids to react and respond first to me as a parent, and eventually, much more importantly, even to the Lord as He provides instructions. And we need to do that in ways that we have kind of a low consequence environment that gradually steps up in severity if they were to not succeed at one of these exercises. Very low consequence when we're dealing with a baby in a high chair that reaches for the shiny object again. Much higher consequence when they're 16 and we've said, now we're going to let you take a car out. And so we should not just assume that because their age has gone up, they are ready for more responsibility. It's really our responsibility. The Lord is looking at us and saying, you must prepare them. And I think what you said earlier about it's not a reactive, we don't wait for them to screw up and then use that as the teaching opportunity. We want to create opportunities for them to screw up when they're learning, so that when it's a real world consequential scenario, that they're not having to learn through really what will be some level of legitimate pain if they get it wrong there. So I think that's true with money. I think that's true with obedience to parents. I think that's true with kind of everything that we are going to be discipling and building into kids. So I would love to hear from our listeners. This is one of those things we've kind of wrapping up this series for the moment. I would love to get some back and forth going on this topic, because we have a lot of listeners that like to kick around some of the ideas we talk about on the podcast. The best place to do that type of back and forth, you guys could all get on and there could be 100 people that say, we think Mark and Steven are off their rockers. But the best place to do that is on the Volley channel. Volley is a little video platform where people who are supporters of this podcast can go and talk to us and each other and kick ideas around. It feels to me like it might be really productive to hear where you agree, where you think, I'm not so sure about this, clarify things, etc. on that channel. There's even moms that show up in there and give us their thoughts. So if you're tired of just having a non-diverse audience here of gender, then you can come to Volley and hear from all sorts of people. The way you get on to the Volley channel is by supporting this podcast. We are supported by you guys. abrahamswallet.com/donate will tell you how to do that if you're interested. And that's all I got for this week. So I think we did a good job on child rearing and training, Stephen.
Great. And if people aren't on the Volley channel and you want to communicate with us, you can always comment on YouTube. You can drop us a line on email. And otherwise, man, I just bless you all with courage to lead and to train. And guess what? None of us love it when we're being trained how to obey. It's just not in our nature to love it. So you've got to go against your child's nature, train them how to obey. Bless you as you do it. And thanks for your time, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.